Hey, how you doing? This is James Ledbetter coming from you from Jay Shema Space. And I wanted to try a new concept for the YouTube channel. I wanted to call it Just in Case You Missed Bible Study. And this would be designed for people who missed Bible study because they had kids, they had work, whatever. You know, life comes to us all. And because they couldn't get to Bible study, this will be a supplement. It'll be about 15, 20 minutes where it holds you down. It'll give you concepts and scriptures that you can think about and meditate on until you get back to some more regular Bible study. So that's what it's meant to do, and hopefully it'll help. And we'll just go ahead and get into it. Right? We'll just get into it. And so we want to start here in 2 Corinthians, the ninth chapter, the 7th verse. And it says, each one must give as he has decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. All right, so we'll get back to that. So this is a discussion that I believe is important to have. The issue of tithing has been discussed by theologians and everyday believers alike. Many Christians believe that 10% is the biblical standard and that we should adhere to it at all costs. Other Christians believe that tithing belongs strictly to the Old Testament, and we don't have to do that no more because we're in the New Testament of grace, right? And we're going to look into that, right? And the truth is that the issue of tithing is a little bit more complex than it's often given credit for, but it doesn't have to be divisive. Doesn't have to be divisive. Today, I want us to look honestly at what tithing was, why it existed, and how generosity is meant to function in the life of the believer today. All right, so I want to look at this in 4 ways, right? I want to look at what tithing was, and then I want to look at the transition to the Mosaic law. Then I want to look at the transition to the new covenant under grace, and then I want to give my thoughts on tithing and how I believe. How that should go, right? And so let's get in. So the origin of tithing. So first things first, we have to say that tithing simply means 1/10. So you're going to give 1/10 of something. That's what a tithe is. And the earliest example of tithing is often found in Genesis, the 14th chapter, the 18th through 20th verses, where Abram gives Melchizedek 1/10 of what he had gained in battle. The text does not say Abram was commanded to do this. Rather, it appears to be a voluntary act of honor and worship. And so we just have to remember, right, that Lot, Abram's nephew, had gotten rounded up by some bandits, and Abram had got the guys together and went after and got them. All right, and so because God gave him the victory, Abram had it in his heart to give back to God. And so this is important because Genesis shows us a practice, not a law, right? It was a practice. It was a one-time deal. It's also important to note that Abram did not do this out of regular income or possessions. He gave from the spoils of war, which again reminds us that this is not a recurring commandment, but a specific act in a specific time, right? And so, one-time deal. God gave him something. He said, you know what, God, thanks for looking out. Here you go. And so now we're going to go into tithing under the Mosaic law. And when we move forward to the law, tithing becomes formalized, right? And so we can look at Leviticus 27 and 30. At a tithe of everything from the land, whether grain from the soil or fruit from the trees, belongs to the Lord. All right. And here God's commanding Israel to give 1/10 of what the land produces. This is a critical distinction that is often missed. Biblical tithing was primarily tied to agriculture, not income-based. So we're not talking about money. We're talking about 1/10 of grain, 1/10 of the sheep, whatever. That's what it was. Tithes were tied to land ownership, harvest, and livestock. And this mattered because Israel was a theocratic nation, not merely a religious community. Tithing functioned as part of Israel's national covenant system. So we got to think of this, right? In America, we have the president. He's the head of everything. Yeah, there are other functions, there are other bodies, but he is the head. Well, in that society, God was the head of everything. He was the one who dictated and decreed how things were going to work and how things were going to go. And so now tithing function as part of Israel's national covenant system, and it was similar to taxes or social welfare programs, right? And so now it's formalized, and now we're doing things to take care of people. All right. And so now we can look at the three tithes, all right? The three tithes. There are three tithes, and that came out to be about 23%. So we talk about the 10%, but there were more tithes on top of that that added up to 23 to 26%. And the first one was the Levitical tithe. And this could be found in Numbers, the 18th chapter, the 21st to 24 verses. This tithe supported the Levites who had no land inheritance because their inheritance was the Lord himself. Their full-time work in the tabernacle and temple meant they depended on the faithfulness of the people. All right, so we have to look at this, right? At any given time, you couldn't have a job as a Levite, right? Because at any given time, the cloud, pillar of cloud could come down, pillar of fire could come down, and it was time to pack up, time to go, right? And so at any given time, that could happen. So you couldn't have a job. And plus all the sacrifices, you had to get up the utensils, you had to get serving dishes, you had to get all the knives, all that stuff up, had to get it up. The poles, the Ark of the Covenant, you had to get all that up, and you had to go. So you didn't really have time for a regular job. So you needed to be taken care of, and you needed to be provided for. And God was providing that to the Levites. All right. So now let's look at the second tithe, and that's the festival tithe. And you can find that in Deuteronomy, the 14th chapter, the 22nd to 27 verses. This tithe was eaten by the worshiper in the presence of God during national festivals. It promoted worship, community, joy, and remembrance. So we have to remember that the Passover was part of this, right? And so God wanted you to always remember the Passover, and you wanted to always remember the Passover, to remember that God looked out for you when you ain't have nothing. When you were down bad, God looked out for you. So that's where we are, right? And so this was meant for you to take that and have a good time and go somewhere. So if the journey was too far, the produce could be converted into money for travel purposes. But the tithe itself was still agricultural in origin. So if it was too far for you to go, you could change the money in. You could change the produce into money. Or you could change the produce and money and go to the festival in Jerusalem. But if it was too far, you were too far from Jerusalem, you could change the money. You could change the produce into money again, and then you could go out and get what you wanted to be happy. You can go out and get your food. You can go out and get your wine. You can go out and get anything godly that would make you happy, right? And that would bring joy to your life, because that's what God wanted. God wanted you to have a good time. He wanted you to commune with you, and he wanted you to commune with him, and he wanted both of y'all to have a good time, right? And so that's what it was about. So the third tithe is the poor tithe, right? And that can be found in Deuteronomy, the 14th chapter, 28th and 29th verse, the 26th chapter, the 12th through 15th verse. And so what happened was every third year, this tithe was supported. And it supported orphans, it supported widows, it supported foreigners, it supported the Levites. So, okay, the Levites we know about. They need stuff, right? They need stuff. So we got them out the way. But now we need to look at the orphans, the widows, and the foreigner. All right. So orphan, if you were orphan back then, you were down bad, right? You had a rough patch, right? Because that means you had no uncles, no aunts. Nobody could kind of come in and take you in, right? You had nobody. So that was rough. Also, if you were a widow, that was rough. If you were used to having a man around to help you with the things around the house or whatever, and you no longer had them, that was a rough time as well. And then the foreigner. And so we can look at it like today, right? Today, we have foreigners and people want to say things about them. Yeah, that's another thing. But whatever, right? But in Israel, you could be a refugee, right? And if you're a refugee, you may not have had the time to get yourself together in order to provide for yourself, truly. And so in this case, this is what it was meant to take care of and look after people. So this ensured that social justice and care for the vulnerable were embedded in Israel's covenant life. And so when we talk about tithing in scripture, we're not just talking about the 10% rule. We are talking about a national system designed to sustain worship, clergy, and community care, right? It's a comprehensive system. And so now we're going to transition into the New Testament. So now that we understand what tithing was, we have to ask what changed under the new covenant. And Paul tells us plainly in Romans 6:14, for sin shall no longer be your master, because you are not under the law, but under grace. And the church was not a nation state anymore. Nope. There was no more Levitical priesthood. There was no more temple tax. And significantly, the New Testament never commanded Christians to tithe. Right? Never said anything about tithing in the New Testament. All right. And so that silence is deafening, right? Because it says a lot. That means maybe you should think about it differently. And also, what the New Testament does say about giving. Paul draws a principle from the Old Testament. Those who serve at the altar share in what is offered on the altar. And that's from 1 Corinthians, the ninth chapter, the 13th verse. The principle remains. Those who labor in the ministry should be supported. Remember that Paul said he was a Hebrew of Hebrews, said he was circumcised on the 8th day. It talks about his qualifications of being a Jew. And so he said that he loved the law. And he still loves the law because the law gives you guidance, but it shouldn't drive your heart. Your heart should drive the law. And so that's essentially what Paul's saying. And so the method changed. Instead of law, Paul emphasized voluntary giving, proportional giving, sacrificial generosity. And the clearest teaching comes from 2 Corinthians 8th and 9th, the 8th chapter and the 9th verse, where the Macedonian churches gave generously out of extreme poverty, not out of obligation. So this is where it changed, right? Paul said, man, you got to look in your heart and allow that to dictate what you give. Paul concludes, each one must give what he decided in his heart, not reluctantly or under compulsion. All right, so that's it, right? That's breaking it down in a nutshell. And what does Jesus say about tithing? Jesus says, you give 1/10 of your spices, but you have neglected the more important matters of the law, justice, mercy, and faithfulness. And you can find that in Matthew 23rd chapter, 23rd verse. So Jesus is affirming within the Mosaic covenant, speaking to Pharisees before the cross. He does not abolish it. He does not abolish the covenant, the old covenant. He doesn't abolish it, but he does not elevate it above mercy, justice, and faithfulness. That's what it is. He's basically saying it's your heart. It's your heart should drive the covenant. Tithing without a transformed hearts was never the goal. And so we should know this because Jesus is the sacrifice. Right? Jesus is the sacrifice, and he's also the priest. Right? So he's serving both functions, and so he doesn't have to. We don't have to worry about sacrifices or worry about the priest anymore. We've gotten rid of that, and we can find that in Hebrews 4:14, a great high priest who has passed through the heavens. Hebrews 7:23-28, a better priesthood than the Levitical one. And we can look at other scriptures on and on that's basically saying that Jesus is the sacrifice and he is the priest. And so now we no longer need the Old Testament way of doing things, a way of thinking things by the law. We should be thinking about it through our hearts. And so now we'll need to expand our understanding of giving. And so Miles Monroe says that if there's 24 hours in a day and God requires 10%, then 2 hours and 40 minutes belong to God. And so I get down with that, but the 10%, whatever. But I get down with that because it's all given by God, right? We all get stuff from God, including time. He doesn't have to allow you to live, right? And so if he's giving you time, you should give it back, right? It just makes sense. And you could do that in a multitude of ways. And one of the ways is serving, another one's mentoring, encouraging, and loving others. And so that's why it would be hard to to sit down and try to figure out 10%. I spend 10 minutes loving others. Okay, whatever, right? And so all of this is generosity before God, right? And so all of this is going to be looked favorably. If your heart is right, it's all going to be looked favorably by God, right? And so now we come down to how I feel about tithing, right? So I still believe, James, believe you should still tithe 10%. I understand it's not required by grace anymore. I understand all of that, but I still believe that we should tithe, or I should tithe 10%, right? And the reason I believe in 10% is because the preacher still needs to get paid. The piano player still needs to get paid. Water needs to be in the church. Air and heat need to be in the church, right? So those things there exist, right? And in order to go to church, well, I like to go to church, right? In order to go to church, there needs to be a church to go to, and so I believe in giving my 10%. And then the second reason I'd like to do the tithing is because I like to pay homage to the Old Testament. So the Hebrew way of life kind of speaks to me a bit, right? Because it means that we put God first, right? We try to put God first in our hearts, in our minds. And so, so I want to live like that. And so I think that doing the 10% helps me to live like that. Okay. And then the most important thing is it's a litmus test, right? It holds me accountable. We all know the guy that when you lended him, $30, $40, right? He said, yo, man, I'm going to get you back. Or when my taxes come, I'm going to get you your money, right? And taxes come and then they go and you don't get your money, right? And and stuff like that. I don't want to be that way towards God, right? I don't want to be like, oh God, I could have did it, but I didn't get to do it, whatever, right? I don't want to be that guy. So I want to be accountable. And so to be accountable, I think I need to hold myself to a standard, and 10% is the standard. So there it is. So I hope that helps. Man, if you find anything valuable in what I've said, what I'm doing, please like and subscribe to the video. I love you guys. Have a blessed day, and God bless.